Today on The State of Us, are apartment owners in trouble and investors are in love with self-storage? Apartment landlords face peril as their debt costs skyrocket. According to the Wall Street Journal headline from just a few days ago, apartment buildings, long considered a real estate haven, are emerging as the next major trouble spot in the beleaguered commercial property world. Investors count on a love of self-storage as businesses expect Americans to keep accumulating more stuff. Welcome to The State of Us. I'm your host, Justin T. Weller, joined today by the one and only, your friendly redneck liberal and the senior resident historian here at True Chat, Mr. Lance Jackson.
So what's first, apartments or storage units?
Well, which one do you want to?
No, let's do apartments because I got a lot to say about storage units. So
we'll go with the one you don't have much to say about first. Get that one out of the way so I got time to yak.
So they're charging more for apartments, huh?
Well, we've known that, right? I mean, we've known that the apartment sector's main problem is not a lack of demand.
But I thought I heard where they're losing money.
That's right. The demand's not the problem. Rents have soared since 2020. It's interest rates that are the issue.
So what does that do to apartment owners?
I mean, interest rates?
People, I mean, I understand the people who are renting that they're paying more, but why are the owners of apartment buildings losing money? Isn't that what I heard you say with the title?
That's right. So
how are they losing money when they're charging tenants more than they've ever charged before? If I'm a tenant, I'm like, why am I feeling sorry for the landlord? They're making more money than they ever have.
Borrowing costs have doubled, rent growth is slowing, and building expenses are rising. Data provider TREP earlier this year identified one type of rental apartment debt as accounting for a large share of the commercial mortgages at risk of default. Outstanding multifamily mortgages more than doubled over the past decade to about $2 trillion, according to the Mortgage Bankers Association. That is nearly twice the amount of office debt.
So did people buy apartments with an ARM? With an adjustable rate mortgage? Because, I mean, if you bought a $2 million building at a fixed rate loan, your payment wouldn't change. So you wouldn't be affected by mortgage. I mean, am I missing something? What am I missing here, Justin? Please fill me in as a landlord. Okay. What am I missing here? Because are these people who didn't buy property on a fixed rate mortgage and now they're getting burned by the high interest rate? Did they take the risk on a 5-year ARM or something? And then,
well, there are those people. There's also, the other thing
that I understand.
To many investors, the factors justified paying high prices. That means that apartment building owners often borrowed more than 80% of the building value from bond markets. Most apartment loans are fixed rate long-term mortgages. During the pandemic, however, investors took out more short-term floating rate loans. Many of these investors raised rents aggressively, betting that they could sell the building or refinance their debt at much higher valuations once their buildings generated higher rental income. But few of them anticipated that interest rates could rise so quickly, pushing down building values and forcing landlords to refinance at higher rates instead of lower ones.
So they gambled and lost, and they want me to feel sorry for them?
Regional banks, a crucial source of funding, are lending far less today, making it harder to refinance mortgages. Rent growth has slowed sharply in many U.S. cities, while inflation and growing insurance premiums have raised the cost of running buildings. So in other words, at the beginning of the pandemic, there's a rush into, more residential rental properties, especially multifamily, because, and the article points this out, traditionally, multifamily residential is a very safe real estate investment because regardless of how the economy is doing, people are going to need it. If the economy is going well, you can charge more in rents and make more money off of your multifamily unit. If the economy is going poorly, People move out of homes, get rid of mortgages, and move into apartments. So people always need apartments is the logic, is the way the thinking goes.
That's what I've always thought. Sure.
So people say, hey, there's a pandemic coming. People are going to be at home more. It's a great time to buy. Interest rates are low, Well, interest rates are low. They overlend and they buy higher. They borrow more against value. And then if value stagnates or stays about the same, but interest rates go up, now you can't do what you were thinking you were going to do, which is to refinance at a lower rate after you made improvements and increased rent. So you made improvements and spent all that money and you increased rents, and now you're having trouble.
So did people not, because I'm a resident historian, did people not study history? Didn't that happen with homes in the last 15, 20 years? Wasn't that where people, the banks lended people more money than they should have based on their income, and then they bought on adjustable rate mortgages, and then the mortgage, the rates went up, and then people basically their houses were worth less than what they were paying for them. And that's basically what you're describing here.
Or the other notion is that sometimes in the effort to give out more loans, institutions figured out ways to consider properties more valuable than they actually were. So
now how are these people basically did that kind of something similar to this, and they now have put themselves in a bad situation.
Well,
to where their buildings aren't worth what they paid for them.
Well, they're probably worth what they paid for them, but they borrowed so much against the value that now they're, because of where they borrowed at, if they refinance, which they were counting on having to do, they can't pull any money out in the refinance and their payments actually increase. So it's not so much, maybe the value doesn't go up as much as they anticipated. It's not so much that they're upside down. It's that if part of the plan was, I bought this property at $100,000, I'm going to make all these improvements and it's going to be worth $150,000.
Okay, I'm going to ask the old question we used to have on this show to start every show, and that is, why do I care?
Well, because you don't own any apartments.
Okay, right.
So
I don't rent. I don't own any apartment. My daughters do rent, though.
Yes.
Okay. So how does this affect me, the listener? Why is this an important thing for me to know?
If you rent or know somebody that rents.
Yeah. Is this a bad sign for the economy?
It's not great. I mean, even if you don't feel bad for the landlords, what are the landlords going to do to try to avoid default? The article points this out. They're going to try to increase what they're bringing in. So they're going to push rents higher, right? Because, the alternative is default on your loan with the bank that you can't pay. So they're pushing rents higher. And then, are you making it harder for people to rent? Are you increasing the
rate? If you increase the rates, then it makes it harder for people to save. And many of these young people that are renting are trying to save to buy a house, or they're paying off huge college loans.
Or both.
And
they want a house and pay off college loans, and those rents are going up. So now, in fairness, the rents aren't just going up for the reason of having to avoid default on the mortgages. I mean, the article points out, too, that several factors coincided that don't usually happen all at the same time.
Well, and that is now if you own buildings, right, and you have to fix them, then materials and labor have gone up. So now when you own a building and it needs repairs, the owner's paying more for the repairs,
right?
Which then are passed on typically to the tenants.
Yeah, because there's some landlords, right, who they were banking on things going a certain way and got burned, and you could say, well, that was easy to predict and avoid. There's also the landlords, right, who bought shortly before the pandemic hit, had no idea a pandemic was coming, bought at a low rate and assumed that, or a relatively low rate. I mean, rates weren't, crazy low, but they were pretty low before the pandemic. It was a good time to, get money.
You're still at 2 to 3%.
And even if they're not counting on refinancing, right? So they buy, say it's 6 months before the pandemic, and they buy some residential stuff and they get this, and their plan is to improve it, fix it up, raise rents, and improve, standard of living to increase the value of the property. So they do all that. Pandemic hits, right? prices of material, labor shortages, all of that skyrockets. So every conventional method of calculating what they thought they were going to spend to improve the property has now been blown out of the water.
Okay.
Not only can they not get things at the prices that they wanted, but they also can't do anything as fast as they wanted either. And then rates go up to tamp down inflation. And in order for you to do stuff, because costs went up, you need to refinance and pull money out of the property. But if you refinance, you're going to be at a higher rate.
Now you have the higher rate. Okay.
So now you're, instead of pushing up rents a little bit,
now I'm getting it.
You're pushing up rents a whole lot, because the only way that you can, because the cost of everything else went up, the only way that you can cover the refinance to get the cash that you need to make the improvements is
to sign a fixed rate that's now maybe twice as high as what you originally bought at.
Right. Which gives you the money to fix everything up. Right.
But you can't raise the rates on your apartments until you get done fixing everything up.
Except now what's happening is people are raising rates and not doing anything because they can't, the bank's saying, no, I can't do this because the income for your complex doesn't support it. So, well, I'm going to raise rates preemptively, and
try to create the money that way,
so that it can support a value that the bank can then give me the money. So it's all a shell game. I mean, at the end of the day, but the point being that has a real impact on the Levi's of the world, like our producer, if they're going to look for someplace to rent, because these are the people that own the places that you're going to rent. And the other, side effect of this, right, that's really important to take note of is that if I own a property, right, if Justin owns a property on this street and Lance owns a property on this street, and Lance is in that situation that we just described. So he's raising rents and he's not done anything to his property, right? Mm-hmm. And it needs some attention. Well, my property's down the street and it's in better shape than his. Well, he's raising rents, and he's not doing anything. So if I don't raise rents, now those people that might have a lower expectation of what they're looking for in a property are going to come look at my property if I don't raise rents, because mine's actually cheaper or the same cost as his, and mine's nicer. So it's also forcing the entire market to move, because you can't just, if a group of 10 investors start doing that in an area, the investors who played it right, and who got it right, they're in a situation of being forced to move their rent prices up, because if they don't, then they're going to get inundated with applications from what should be over here. And there's no shortage of people that need apartments, so you're creating this environment where, because of what's happened to a few,
why would you, if you're
pushing rents everywhere?
If you have a nicer place, okay, and this is the question, and we can go to break and you can answer it when we come back. If you own a nicer place and your rent is the same or lower than mine, and your place is nicer, why would you raise your rates? Because you could easily keep it full of good people, which is, in my mind, why you own rental property anyway. You want good people that are going to take care of the property, that are going to stay for a long time and pay their bill every month, pay their rent. If you have that, why would you raise the rate that you're going to charge them and run them out? Answer that for me when we come back, will you?
Keep it here on The State of Us. We'll be right back. Inflation has also allowed landlords to raise rents, according to the Wall Street Journal. That's raised them even higher than usual, which boosted the values of their buildings. Asking rents rose 25% over 18 months spanning 2021 and 2020, according to rental website Apartment List. To many investors, these factors justified paying high prices. Apartment building owners often borrowed more than 80% of the building value from bond markets. We talked about in the first segment, Lance, why or how, I guess not why, how sort of we got in this situation where there's, and the other thing is there's some apartment landlords in peril. I guess anytime that the Wall Street Journal reports on this, a lot of what you're looking at are mega property groups that own lots of property, especially in prime markets like Los Angeles, New York, Chicago,
San Francisco.
So all of those types of places are going to be places that a lot of this data comes from. So it may not necessarily be reflective of, we're recording the show, small town Ohio. That doesn't necessarily mean that you have a lot of investors who made that same mistake here. I don't know anybody that's in that specific position, or who isn't in that position that didn't know that going in, you know what I mean? Who wasn't aware of it ahead of time. So I know there are people, but you had a question before we went to break.
I did. I asked, you said you were using the example of me owning a place and I was in that situation and I couldn't afford, the bank wouldn't loan me more money and I had repairs that I needed to do to upgrade my building. So I'm going to charge my tenants more. You were next door with another rental property and your place was nicer and you felt the need then to raise your prices. And my question is, why? If the idea is to get good tenants who will pay on time and who take care of the property so you're not always having to go in and fix it, why would you raise your rates to keep out other people? You don't have to worry about keeping anybody else out because your people aren't leaving. They're staying. You're giving them a good rate.
Right.
They're not going.
The reason that you'd raise
so why would you raise that seems counterintuitive to me. If I was owning rental property and I had good renters, I wouldn't want to raise their rate to leave and then possibly replace them with someone who's not as good.
Right. And I think that landlords would probably feel that way if there was more competition for tenants, but there's more tenants than there are available spaces. So there's more potential tenants. So there's always an influx of applications. And I mean, again, this is anecdotal, but so one of the properties that we have available right now is very different than one that we rented a few months ago. But I mean, we had, and it's not an exaggeration, like 40, applications within 48 hours of having put it up. And it honestly was just at the point where we didn't even review every application because we couldn't. It just wasn't worth the investment of time to review every application. Because the other thing that I think folks don't get is, I'm sure that hopefully a lot of people listening to this show are good, honest people that wouldn't lie on a rental application. But because the rental market's so tight, it's more likely also that people are not entirely honest on their applications. Landlords are using those to make decisions.
Well, I understand if you're looking for a new tenant.
Yeah, you're talking about with existing tenants.
I'm talking about with existing tenants. Why would you raise their rates just because everybody in the neighborhood raised them? Because now you're possibly forcing them to go somewhere else. Because you can replace
them if they leave, and they probably know that.
But you just said you don't. Right, but they may not be as good. And then this is where the business sense of mine doesn't align with what you're saying people do. So now you're going to push out a good tenant who maybe for 3 years has paid on time. You've had to do normal maintenance on their place. They're not causing any damage. You force them now because you're going to raise your rates, and then you're going to go through all these applications, and quite possibly you were going down the road to tell me you're going to replace them with somebody who's worse. And so now you're going to have somebody that you have to evict or who's going to be late paying.
If you have to replace them. But I think the gamble's on.
So you're going to raise rates and gamble that they're going to stay and pay higher?
If the place down the road is worse and charging more, they're going to put up with the rate increase because they don't have a choice.
Unless they can't afford it.
Then where are they going though? I mean, you're right. You can't afford it, but there's nothing else that's cheaper.
But why would you do that to run out somebody who's been good for you to replace them with somebody who may not be? Because now
I think
the apartment may sit empty 2 or 3 months out of the year while you go through tenants trying to find another good one. Why would you risk that as the owner of the building?
They'd risk it when they think that the odds are in their favor that the tenant's going to stomach the increase because they don't have another option. It's not, you might be right in that the tenant would choose another option if there was one, but in the scenario we pitched, the place right down the street next door that's in worse condition is charging more than I'm charging. So,
but if I can't afford it, then I'm going to have to go there.
Well, but you can't go to the place down the street because it charges more than I charge already. I'm the cheapest person in town with the best place. So I can raise to at least what everybody else is charging because you can't afford to go those other places anyway. So you're going to have to stay with me and stomach and figure out how to pay more, or you're going to have to move someplace, I guess, where rents aren't as expensive,
Okay.
I'm not saying that that's what I would do. I'm just saying I think that that's some of the logic that is used in that situation.
I asked the question and I see your answer. And I'm just thinking, man, that's ruthless.
The leverage is, with the landlords at the moment because there's not a lot of good places to find.
See, and that's why I don't do it, because I would try to be a nice person who would want nice people, and I'm not out to gouge anybody and just make more money because I can. And I understand that's not the type of people that typically get it, which is why I'm not in that business.
I think there are lots of people that try to do things the right way. But again, that goes back to what the whole article is about, which is market pressure.
Well, right. And I can see if you're trying to do it that way, but you get a run of bad tenants and all of a sudden your building has only been at 50% capacity for 3 or 4 years, you're not even making enough money to make your mortgage payment. Now you're going to have to raise rates to try. I see where you could get in that situation. I can see where you can get into that situation.
There's a lot of people, who have been in real estate a lot longer than I have, but even in my short time, the other reason that you raise prices is because you don't want 40 applicants. You want 2 or 3. And you're counting on the fact that the higher price is going to scare away some of the people that might lie on their application.
Except you just said that people are going to lie anyway. So
I know. Well, but there's the give and take, right? Of no landlord wants to get stuck with somebody that lied on their application, but there's people that look good on paper who don't actually tell you what they should tell you, like that they lost their job a month before they put on the application.
So before we go to the people that are making a lot of money not renting to people and just renting extra rooms.
Yeah, you want to talk about something to get fired up about.
To me, that makes sense. But what's the solution here to this one? Well, it's just lower interest rates.
Because that's just gonna
the Fed to take their foot off the neck of the economy.
What that would do, right, is more people would be investing in this stuff. And then theoretically, you hope that there's more supply. But that's assuming that they build new, which because of labor-related and supply shortages, that's not likely. So the issue becomes that what most people do, and most of what I own, is nothing that I own, I built new. It's all stuff that was purchased and then used basically in the way that it was purchased from. Now, a few of the things were things that like one person was living in and now 5 or 6 people are living in. So there is some of that can take place. But the issue with prices is available units. It's the law of supply and demand, right? The supply of available housing in the United States to buy or to rent is small, and the demand is larger than the supply. So the favor right now is in the ball of developers and landlords because they control a limited supply, and there's more people that need places than there are places, good places. But again, if it's cheaper to buy something that already exists, that already has tenants in it, as somebody investing, why would I assume the risk and carrying cost of building new? Because I got all that time it's being built, right, where I'm not making anything.
Okay. All right, we're going to transition. You're going to build a storage unit. Yeah. That's what you're going to build. That's what you're going to build.
Your price per square foot's a lot better on storage
right.
units.
People are going to, I guess I'm going to lead with this. I was amazed because I'm looking at selling a house, and obviously that means I'm looking to buy another property. And when I read this article on storage units right now are costing more per square foot than houses are.
What about this love of storage units? Our producer looks riveted, excited to talk about self-storage. Keep it here on State of Us. We'll be right back. There are self-storage facilities around the world, but nowhere, according to the Wall Street Journal, have they been more popular to rent and profitable to own than in the United States. That's thanks to Americans' propensity to accumulate more stuff than they can squeeze into their homes.
I mean, you want to make money. Why are you not doing this? This is where the money, it seems to me, this is where the money, because even in small town America, we just had a gentleman build two new storage areas.
Yeah.
Okay, with multiple units, and the word on the street is those are full, and now he's using the profit to build more next door.
Yep.
Because there's a greater demand for that than there is for these apartments that you keep buying and fixing up. So what?
People need housing. They don't need self-storage, but there's demand for self-storage and you can make good money off of it. I don't begrudge anybody who's in self-storage because it's a good business move because people are willing to pay for it. Okay. So people want it, right? They're looking for it and they're willing to pay for it and you can make money doing it. So all that sounds fine until you start looking at what you're paying per square foot. And then you realize that one of the adages, right, of people in self-storage is understanding that most people spend more on the storage than the stuff in storage is worth. Because once it goes in storage, it rarely comes out of storage.
Right. So why do you care that if you're a business person? It's the people who are.
I thought we were being all ethical on the first two segments of the show.
Well, if there's.
It sounds like we're ripping people off, taking advantage of people that don't know how to budget or don't understand that they'd be better off getting rid of their stuff and playing off of people's emotional, desire to hold on to things that they visit once a year at their unit. How is that not as evil as the guy with the nicer apartment unit down the street raising prices to match the slumlord? How is that not as unethical? Well, these going after people don't understand.
You're going after people who have the money. I'm going to answer your question.
Okay,
I have an answer. You're going after the people who are trying to make a better life for themselves in the apartment business. You're just
people in self-storage aren't going for better lives.
Well, they're not. They're going after the people who have already made it, who have money to waste, who have so much stuff that they're going to save all their stuff that they can't fit in their house and pay more for the square footage than their house is worth. So you're talking about ethical. You're going after people who have only first world problems, not over young people like Levi who are trying to save money to pay off college loans or to pay for college and then who want to buy a house. You're making money. You're not making money off of them. You're making money, in this case, off of people who have already made money. And they've made so much money that they've got so much stuff that they can't even fit it into their house. I don't care if you take advantage of them.
So
Levi doesn't either.
Here's the thing, right, with storage units. And I was looking at the article to see, because this is a pretty long article, folks. And of course, it's linked at stateofus.org if you want to take a look. I don't know if there's really data on this, but I'd like to find out because I think that this would help us answer this question of what is the income makeup of rental units for storage? Because the article says the storage customer is typically described as irrational because they're willing over time to pay far more than the value of whatever they're storing. Storage is so profitable thanks to two key factors: month-to-month leases, in which the rents can be raised on short notice, and human nature. Most stays outlast the introductory rates. Quote, statistically, once a customer stays with us for a year, they end up staying for 5 years. That's Public Storage CEO Joseph Russell Jr. And the other thing...
So you give the low introductory rate, and then over time you gradually increase the rates, and the people are like, well, I don't have anything else to do with that stuff. So
but the real kicker is, I can tell you from having had to evict tenants that didn't pay rent, that they have told me when they're asking for time to move out. I had one say in court, well, we're going to go get a storage unit so we can probably be out in the next 2 weeks. So we're not going to pay rent, but we have money and we'll go get the storage unit, which we're paying way more for per square foot than the apartment, so that we can shove all our stuff in there all this stuff that's apparently very valuable to us, and then end up paying more for the storage unit than the stuff that's in the storage unit was worth. I guess what I'm getting at is I think there's two very different types of storage unit renters out there.
Okay.
And I don't have any storage units, so I can't speak to it directly, but having gone to several storage facilities with a friend when it was time to auction off units that people hadn't paid on, you open units and you find two things. You find the people that you described, which is they've made it and they didn't want to throw this stuff away because it was easier for them to buy a thing and shove it over here and forget about it than it was to throw it away. So that's why it's here. There's those people, right? So they have money, they can buy stuff, and this is stuff that they don't not care enough about to throw away, but not enough to keep in their home. So it goes here. And then there's the other unit that you open up that's full of trash, that is full of whatever because somebody was in a bind and they shoved a bunch of stuff here, and that was the option. So that's what they did, So on the one hand, you've got the middle class or upper middle class customer who just doesn't have enough room for their stuff. On the other hand, you've got this customer that is using this because they're going from point A to point B and they think they don't have any other option. And most of what they're keeping is not stuff that is even worth like 1 or 2 months rent of the unit. It's all stuff that's like, why are we keeping this? And if after 6 months you've paid twice what the stuff is worth, now I'm not upset with those people, but I'm saying, aren't we taking advantage of people who can't budget or who haven't done the math to figure out that you would have been better off saving that money and getting rid of this stuff so that you could go afford an apartment where you could keep this stuff rather than buying these storage
isn't that what
units?
Capitalism's all about?
Well, I'm glad that somebody else is arguing for the ruthless approach. Because that's the other side of it, right? People, the evil landlord, landlord for storage units or landlord for apartments. But it's like, is it my fault that these people are stupid? Maybe if people knew this stuff, then they wouldn't get taken advantage of.
But if I talk to 5 people about investing their money and there's only one who's trying to go to sleep right now, who's actually doing that, is that my fault that the other 4 didn't pay attention to it?
I'm not disagreeing with you.
Am I ruthless? Because
I'm not disagreeing with you.
Because our producer in 40 years, when I'm dead and gone, he can come, to where my ashes were spread and fall down on his knees and thank me for getting him to invest. And the other 4 who are still going to be greeters at Walmart in their 70s because they're going to have to keep working, didn't take it. Am I the ruthless evil one because they didn't take the advice that I gave them when they were 17 and 18 years old?
You also have to be open to receiving the information. We've got a producer here, right? Who my guess is you don't even have to answer on the air. You can just shake your head.
So apply that to this.
You don't
right?
have any self-storage, right? Currently, you personally don't have any self-storage and you ain't got an apartment, but you're probably going to have an apartment sometime in the next 5 years or so, you would think, right? You're probably going to be paying for a place to live.
I mean, mom and dad are hoping. They're hoping you're going to do that.
Yeah, he might be hoping. Well, I hope not.
No, he's like, no, I'm living with mom and dad till I'm 30 because, the rent.
Mom and dad are sitting at home.
Yeah,
man, we got to find this guy, so we got to get this guy out of here.
And mom and dad are like, we need a self-storage unit if Levi doesn't move out because we're going to turn his bedroom into a storage unit. Right, get rid of your stuff before you get, not to bash on the storage unit owners and not to take business away from them, but you really need to think twice about what it is that you're putting in there. Because understand, once you rent that, even if I think what you read from the article, that yes, you got in for a low introductory rate for 3 months, but most of the time people keep it there longer than that. And once you kept it there a year, it's going to stay for 5 years.
Well, because the longer it's there, the harder it is to get rid of.
Until it's out of sight, out of mind.
Uh-huh.
And I fall into that category, right?
Well, because you don't have any storage units currently, but you have a house where you store things, right?
But I have a 1,000 square foot garage,
right?
And I'm going through.
But if it goes into the garage into the wrong corner, it could be.
Well, that's what I'm finding
years
now
before you find it.
Exactly, and I'm like,
I didn't even know I had that.
Right, and I've got to get rid of it now but I didn't know what to do. So I understand that mentality. You need to get rid of it. Because what's it worth?
Well, that's what you have to ask yourself.
Right.
You know, if it's important enough that you're trying to keep, but you're putting it in storage, is it important? Is it as important as you think it is?
Do you really need it?
There's very legitimate, reasons. Likewise, if you have stuff that it's like, hey, I live in a little efficiency apartment, but I have, maybe these family mementos or whatever. And like, I don't have room to store this stuff, but I don't want to throw it away. It's worth it to me to pay. That's fine. But if you've not really asked yourself that and you're getting it to avoid throwing it away, that's one of those, you might want to assess that because you are paying a lot per square foot for that storage space, relative to what you could be paying for like a house, or saving for a down payment or that kind of thing. So, and they are good short-term options for people like Lance, who might be looking like, hey, I'm leaving this house and moving to this place, and that's going to take place over a year. I'm not going to have space. That's very different. But the point of the article is that that's not what happens with most storage spaces. Most people tell themselves that and then end up having it for 5 years and like, oh my gosh, I've had this storage unit for 5. What's out there again? I don't know. I just paying my monthly amount.
Right.
So
we probably set it up to where it even comes out now automatically out of your bank account and you don't even realize that it's leaving.
I guess I'd tell people that, if you're going to get a storage unit, ask yourself, is what I'm putting in here valuable enough to me to come see it once a month? If the answer is no, then you probably shouldn't be getting the storage unit. Is it really worth paying $150 a month for that storage unit, or $200 or $300? I mean, that's a lot of money that you could be putting toward all kinds of things, or kids' college savings. Like, I mean, it's a hefty chunk of change, So anyway, why do we have the show today, Lance?
Well, because
we have our producer, put him to sleep.
I think mostly
to
put the 17-year-old to bed, because he doesn't know how to keep normal hours.
Oh.
That's his problem.
I would just like to point out that you're the one ragging on him and not me this time. I just want to make that note in his head because he gets on me.
But in his defense, he's trying to live large here the last week before he goes back for his senior year of high school.
Little rebellion.
So he's just being rebellious and sticking it to the man by saying, I can stay up and still go to work all day and make money to earn.
Isn't the only man he's sticking it to himself because he's dragging around all tired?
To pay my car. I don't know. He's trying to... I don't know what he's trying to prove, but he's 17. I'm not supposed to know what he's trying to prove.
He doesn't know what he's trying to prove.
17, right? Soon to be 18 though, so then it's a whole different ball game.
That's right. Well, it'll all change right overnight. Then
it will.
Snap the fingers, and
then this will never happen again because he'll
all grown up,
instantaneously be smart. At least that's what we say as a society. But here at True Chat, we have a mission, and that mission is to educate people by providing honest, open, and respectful conversations. And hopefully, you've enjoyed today's show and learned something. Think about those storage units. Think about those rental prices. Do what you can. Do the best you can to beat the man and save your money and get it invested. And if you like today's show and your family and friends like to listen, tell them as a podcast. They can find it on Spotify, Overcast, Stitcher, Apple Podcast, and everywhere podcasts are found.
State of Us releases new episodes Tuesdays and Thursdays. First thing in the morning, those same episodes can be heard on the weekends on AM and FM radio stations across the United States and parts of Canada. For the State of Us, I'm Justin T. Weller.
I'm Lance Jackson.
Special thanks to yawning recording producer, Levi LaForge, and thank you to senior producer, who I'm sure is wide awake, Bradley Bush. Thank you to our audience for tuning in. We'll see you next time. Be the change. Be sure to check out our website, thestateofus.org, for books, articles, and all the ways to tune in. thestateofus.org.